All right, climate envoys from 4 countries in the European Union are visiting South Africa, and their mission is to help end over-reliance on coal. Eskom uses coal for more than 80% of its power generation, and this makes the country one of the world's leading carbon emitters. For more on this, we're joined by climatologist, that's Francois Engelbrecht from the Global Change Institute. Francois, thank you so much for your time, and good morning to you. Now, of course, we know and understand that South Africa is one of the largest emitters, obviously, of carbon in the world. In real terms, though, what does that mean?
Good morning, Tamelu. Thanks for having me. Yes, South Africa is an important emitter of carbon dioxide. Globally, we are responsible for about 1% of the emissions. But per capita, we are, of course, one of the highest emitters in the world. And overall, we rank 15th in the world, above the UK, for example, as an emitter of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So the climate change problem and the global warming problem cannot, in fact, be solved without involving countries such as South Africa and all the other countries that are responsible for emissions in this order of magnitude. If we add up all the countries that are responsible for about 1.5% of the emissions or less per country, it adds up to almost 40% of the world's emissions. So the global warming problem cannot be solved without involving countries such as South Africa.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, how important is it that we reduce these emissions when we look at areas like eMalahleni, known to be heavily polluted because of coal mine, emissions? How important is it that we reduce this and we have conversations about reducing it?
Yeah, it's very important for South Africa to get down its pollution levels, and specifically in the context of this visit of the envoy from the United Kingdom, our carbon dioxide emissions. There are 2 main ways through which this pollutant impact on our health and on our future, one can say. The first is, of course, through the direct impacts on air pollution, which is still estimated to bring a premature end to the lives of millions of people every year across the world. But the other big problem, and this is what this visit is about, is, of course, global warming and climate change. South Africa itself is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Temperatures are rising fast. Impacts are increasing in South Africa in terms of impacts on big droughts, in terms of impacts on heat waves. So it is absolutely in South Africa's own interest that we reduce carbon dioxide emissions rapidly and that we make a contribution to this upcoming United Nations climate negotiations meeting being a success.
Right. And just realistically then, where should South Africa be getting, its fuel for its power generation?
Yes, well, we are, of course, a wonderfully blessed country in terms of the lots of sunshine we all know we have in South Africa. In the southern parts of South Africa, in the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, we have a wonderful wind climatology in terms of generating power through big wind farms. So one can imagine a future where South Africa will, for example, have these massive solar farms, for example, in the Northern Cape, and much bigger wind farms than we currently have in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. There are immense investment opportunities here and economic growth opportunities for South Africa, more opportunities to grow jobs. And I think it's very clear that our future in terms of energy generation is in our renewable sector, which is growing, but not as fast as it should be growing.
Yeah, I mentioned in my intro earlier on that, an envoy, of course, is in South Africa to have these conversations with the country. What's the significance of this envoy? I understand from 4 different countries in Europe?
Highly significant. It's a huge compliment for South Africa, and it's a vote of confidence in South Africa. And it's not because of our relatively high contribution to emissions. It's more about the role that South Africa can play in the negotiations. So South Africa has a long-standing record of at least a decade of being a main role player at the climate negotiations. Specifically, South Africa has always played a leading role in the Africa Group, which is a powerful negotiation bloc at the negotiations. South Africa also often sides itself with other big developing economies, China, India, Brazil. South Africa also has some influence with these countries. So if South Africa should make a very strong commitment at the meeting in terms of even more ambitious undertaking in terms of reducing its own emissions, it may play a big role in at least getting the Africa group also behind rapid reductions in carbon dioxide emissions. So I think it's more about the role that we can play at the meeting, and that's probably the main reason why we are having the visit of the envoy at the moment.
All right, well, we appreciate you talking to us and joining us this morning. Francois Engelbrecht, thank you so much for your time this morning.